And our guest after a quick word from FanDuel. You can get buckets this NBA season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. And right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. You can bet on all your favorite NBA teams and players on FanDuel with quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive props, and so much more. Just visit FanDuel.com/UCSS and shoot your shot. FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NBA. And now we are thrilled to welcome on Matthew Hamachek, the director and executive producer of the Dynasty New England Patriots. The new 10-part docuseries premieres this Friday on 2/1/6 Day on Apple TV+. The first 2 episodes released on Friday. And here is the director and executive producer, Matthew Hamachek. And part of the first episode revolves around Bill Belichick's time here in Cleveland. Matthew, thank you for taking some time to hang out with us today.
Hey, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, Matthew, let's dive right into that, because obviously some fans in Cleveland, we're a huge football town, so some fans might be interested in this documentary because it's about Bill Belichick, it's about the Patriots dynasty. But specifically for Cleveland, as Mike just mentioned, that it starts with his years in Cleveland. What would your recap of his time in Cleveland look like?
Well, I would quote Jackie Mack, the great sports journalist in Boston, and she sort of described it as an underwhelming stint as a head coach. And so I think the reason that we really dive into that story in the series, especially in episode 1, is because in New England at the time, what you had was a quarterback who was the $100 million quarterback, the big star basically on a team that was not doing that well in Drew Bledsoe, who had gone down with a horrific injury against the Jets earlier in the 2001 season. And then he gets cleared to come back. And meanwhile, this young unknown named Tom Brady has basically been out there, and he's been doing pretty well, but against the Rams against one of the opponents that year, hadn't done great, and Belichick had a really tough call to make. And the reason that the Cleveland story is so relevant is because Belichick sort of faced a similar decision with Kosar in Cleveland and what to do there, because as I recall from the stories that we were told in the series, I think Kosar had broken his leg or hurt his ankle or something like that, and when he came back, he just wasn't as mobile and wasn't as good as he was. And that led to this press conference where Bill says something to the effect of, it was a decision because of his diminishing physical skills. And then you see the way that decision is reacted to by people in Cleveland, both journalists and fans alike. And, a few years later eventually leads, to art moving and the reaction to that. So that's the reason we focused on it. And it was a really interesting story to tell relative to the decision that Bill had to make with Drew Bledsoe and Tom Brady.
Matt, I look at it, and you take a look at those early years with Belichick, and one of the things that stands out is his coaching staff and the people that came from it. Nick Saban, you have, I believe, Kurt Ferentz was on that staff. I think maybe even Gruden might have been cut their teeth. Jim Schwartz was under Bill Belichick as well as a staff assistant. And it just seems like with the Browns, it was an experiment that was a little early before its time, didn't really have time to really gel and to see it through. And a lot of people, have always thought, you go back and look at it and say, man, what would have it been if they would have had time, if they would have been able to do it? And then obviously the team moves. Did you get the perception that he looks back at that time and says, that was a great experiment. If we would have had time to do what we needed to do you think they would have been successful in Cleveland?
I have no doubt that Bill probably looks at it that way. But you mentioned all these people that came through that system in Cleveland. The thing that I think about are people like Ernie Adams, who was there in Cleveland and then went and worked with Bill in New England for 20 years. Also Scott Pioli, who was there, who ended up becoming the vice president of player personnel. with the New England Patriots. And both of these guys have never really gone on the record about Cleveland or about their time with the New England Patriots. And to have access to them, Ernie Adams in particular, we had 15 hours of interviews with him. And I think both of them, along with Bill's interview in our series, really gave us great insight to the way that the coaching staff looked at all of these things. And they took us into the rooms when they were making these tough choices. And those choices sometimes led to great success, like the choice to go with Tom Brady early on. They also take us into the room when there are choices being made that ultimately lead to the unraveling of the Patriots dynasty.
Matt, for me, I was a kid. Like I was damn near a baby when Bill Belichick coached here in Cleveland. Based on the people that you've talked to, even if you've talked to Bill Belichick himself, how do people? I know you said on the coaching aspect, it's kind of like an incomplete, or he didn't get the job done. But does he ever speak about like how he enjoyed Cleveland, didn't enjoy Cleveland? Is there some bitterness there, or is this like one of those places that I wish I can kind of seen it all the way through?
The truth is, I didn't go that much into depth with about his time in Cleveland with him. A lot of what we're using there is archive that we found, and I think what's so remarkable about the footage that we found is he, by the time he got to the Patriots, I think he was a little bit more closed off. His press conferences became more of the "we're on to Cincinnati," kind of one-word, two-word sentences kind of thing. But in Cleveland, what you see is a guy who would invite local sports personalities in to film with him for a while and be there in team meetings, be there at practices. And he really opened up and gave access to people at that time. And, one of the things that somebody told me that isn't actually in the doc is that moment that when Bill says the stuff at that press conference about Kosar and the reaction to it and how much vitriol there was for that is one of the reasons that Bill sort of developed the personality that he did in New England, right? Because he learned his lesson that when you get up in front of the press, even if what you say is the honest truth, it sometimes has negative repercussions. So why get up there and continue to say these things that that are going to burn you in the end? So I think there's a lot of lessons from Cleveland. But obviously, the story that I was telling wasn't the Cleveland story, so we were only able to go into a little bit of it.
Once again, you can check out the Dynasty New England Patriots on Apple TV+. It debuts this Friday, February 16th. Matt, we'll get you out on this one, but you spent time with Brady, with Belichick in your previous work. You helped direct and produce a documentary on Tiger Woods. Is there any common thread of greatness you picked up from working with those three individuals? Robert Kraft as well, if you want to go forward. But any common personality traits or characteristics you picked up that all four of those all-time greats all had?
Yeah, work ethic. I mean, it's a simple answer, but these are people who wake up every morning. The only thing they think about is getting better at their craft, and they all came to this. They all came, especially the three pillars of the Patriots in Kraft, Belichick, and Brady. They came at it from different mindsets and with different expertise, but when you think about what they were able to accomplish and what they sustained for 20 years, it's remarkable. And, I didn't grow up a Patriots fan. Some of my family members grew up near Green Bay, Wisconsin. So much like a lot of people in Cleveland, I think, I was indoctrinated at a young age. And, every other team in the league, and fan base in the league looked at the Patriots with envy, and I know personally a little bit of jealousy on my part for what they were able to accomplish. But in the end, what I've realized is that it was due to an incredible amount of hard work and determination, and it's something to be admired.
Matthew, appreciate it, man. Great. Best of luck. We'll be all watching on Apple TV+. Can't wait. Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you having me on.
You got it.
Awesome.
Mike?
Thank you, Matt. Once again, that debuts on Friday, the Dynasty of the New England Patriots. You can find it on Apple TV+.